lobby. Let's all go to the lobby, lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to Now Slain, an It Slays podcast production where we review the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I'm your humble host, Rowan.
Hi, it's Jill.
And we are here to talk about the afterlife with Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. So let's start this off. We've reviewed Beetlejuice on the main program, the original one. But for anyone that hasn't listened to that episode, what are your overall feelings, Jill, on Beetlejuice? And were you prepared for a sequel? Were you a fan of the cartoon as a child? What's your relationship with Beetlejuice and Tim Burton?
Yeah, hell yeah. Well, as being a big Tim Burton fan all my life, Beetlejuice was one of the first Tim Burton movies that I saw. Apart from that, I think it was Nightmare Before Christmas and Edward Scissorhands. But Beetlejuice was definitely one that was on TV a lot, I feel, also.
Yeah, 100%.
And like you said, the animated series, I used to watch that all the time. So yeah, big fan of Beetlejuice, but I think I did say on that episode, I wasn't actually on that episode because I was I don't know, at WrestleMania or something, but being a dirtbag. But I think I said, I like it. It's a classic, but Edward Scissorhands is my favorite Tim Burton movie ever. But I was excited for Beetlejuice to come out because I thought it would be fun to update it. Get the original cast in there, Catherine O'Hara. She's doing really good lately, Schitt's Creek and everything she's been doing. Same thing with Jenna Ortega. She's in her It Girl kind of era. So I was interested to see her in another iconic series. And Winona Ryder, of course. She's been doing Stranger Things. So, everyone's kind of having a moment. So it was cool to see the three of them together. So I was really excited for that after seeing the trailer. And always excited for Micheal Keaton because he's Beetlejuice. But yeah, I was pretty excited. There's a lot of hype for this movie also. But what about you?
Yeah, I was on that episode when we did Beetlejuice.
Were you?
Yeah, if anyone remembers, I, almost went through the screen and perhaps almost murdered Colton.
Oh, no.
Because Colton was not a fan of the original Beetlejuice. And Beetlejuice, like you said, I don't know, it's my childhood. I've seen that movie maybe more than I've seen any other movie. In fact, I was thinking about it, and just this year, I think I've watched my 4K Beetlejuice maybe 5 or 6 times already. It's one of those movies, my parents love it, my wife loves it, I watch it all the time if I just want something on. I think it's a 5-star classic. And growing up, I was also a huge fan of the Beetlejuice cartoon. I still am. I still watch it. I think it's really good. I just, I love everything, Beetlejuice is gross and funny and weird. And I love Micheal Keaton. Micheal Keaton's always great. Not just a great actor, but a good comedian. And I just love Micheal Keaton, everything about it. And, this is one of the few, I've been very vocal on my opinions of Tim Burton on this podcast. So, I do like most of his early works. Not so much anything from, when I was a teenager on. But I was a fan of early Tim Burton. So I'm always interested in what Tim Burton's going to do. So with that, is Beetlejuice actually back from the dead? Or should he have stayed dead? We will find out. We're going to go to the trailer and be back with the synopsis.
If you say his name 3 times, he will appear.
Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice.
I'm needed upstairs. Wants to spill your guts. All right, I will. My ex-wife is back.
Lay low, Mr. Juice. She's a soul sucker.
Yeah, you could say that again.
I want you out of my life.
I swear the afterlife is so random.
Guilty as charged.
Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Rated PG-13.
Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, which was released September 6, 2024, directed by Tim Burton and written by Miles Miller and Alfred Goh, and the synopsis is as follows. After a family tragedy, 3 generations of the Dietz family return home the Winter River. Still haunted by Beetlejuice, Lydia's life is turned upside down when her teenage daughter Astrid accidentally opens the portal to the afterlife. So here on Now Slain, we like to start off with the spoiler-free section for anybody that hasn't seen the film yet and is curious on our opinions. So Jill, what are your initial spoiler-free thoughts?
Okay, like I said earlier, there was a lot of hype for this movie, like a lot of marketing. It was everywhere. Everyone's doing a Beetlejuice collaboration. There's merch everywhere. There's different kinds of drinks. There's different kinds of merch you can get. But going into this theater, like selecting my seats already, it's the most packed theater I've ever seen in my life. Like, for a long time. I haven't seen so many people at the theater, and it was really nice actually to kind of see that revival, especially after COVID, where theaters are pretty dead for the most part. So yeah, I thought that was really nice. And then of course, like the buckets and everything, I saw a lot of people wearing Beetlejuice merch. You could tell who was gonna go see Beetlejuice. So yeah, it felt like a kind of a classic, kind of like having a blockbuster moment. And that doesn't happen very often nowadays. So I was excited for that. So I watched it in IMAX, which was a really good decision because they had like partitions so you can't see other people's like seats. It was loud, so I couldn't hear anybody. So I was really scared it was going to be a daunting experience if people wouldn't be quiet. But it was fine. So there was that. Now for the opening of the movie, I really liked them kind of going through like the original town, like the miniature, and then like also like the iconic like house on the hill. And then you kind of zoom in on Winona Ryder and like her haircut, like everything is pretty iconic. You got Danny Elfman fucking going off in the background. So it was a really nice moment for me. Like it was being kind of, I don't know, it was like honoring the original Beetlejuice, like the reason why everyone in that theater was there. Because there's this sort of nostalgia, and I think they definitely brought it right at the beginning in the credits scene. What about you?
I mean, I'm going to say, you know what? It feels good to see Keaton back in the pinstripes.
Yeah.
You know, and I will say from, you know, if you were worried about what's he gonna be like, I mean, that movie came out in 89 maybe, let's say 87, 89. So like we are many, many years past him, you know, playing this role. And I don't think he really missed a beat whatsoever in this. But you know, overall, I think it's kind of difficult. I mean, it's going to be difficult, I think, with a lot of people our age because we have such high nostalgia for this. Whenever this happens where they, like, revive important IP from our, like, childhoods, you're like, oh, you're going into this, you don't really know. And, you know, I think about stuff like Ghostbusters. Like, I was a pretty big fan of, like, Ghostbusters Afterlife. I thought that did a pretty good job. And then, like, the newer one that came out, I thought was, like, not very good. It was like just passable of like, yeah, you know, it was kind of how I felt about a Marvel movie. Like, yeah, I watched it. Yeah. It existed. It didn't like offend me and being so bad. And this, honestly, I kind of felt the same way about, you know, like you said, lots of little things, especially in the beginning, that kind of get us old heads hyped up with the theme song and, you know, the iconic, like, intros of the, you know, the miniature town and all this kind of stuff. And obviously, you know, people are pumped when they see Winona Ryder playing Lydia again. This is, I would say, probably Winona's, like, most iconic role, maybe.
Yeah.
Or at least for people our age. You know, I'm sure younger people would say Stranger Things, but we know her as Lydia Dietz. And honestly, I just felt it was like such a up and down ride for me in general. I felt...
Me too.
I felt, like I said, I'm not going to go into anything spoilery, but like, you know, I felt Winona, this entire thing, just kind of phoned it in. I didn't think she was very good in this. She didn't seem interested, like she even really wanted to be a part of this project. I can understand her growth and the story beats of it on why they chose that, but I just didn't think it was right. And then what I think most new people going into this, younger kids, would be excited for is Jenna Ortega, who, you know, I think after, you know, kind of her explosion is like Wednesday on Netflix, and that's what the kids are, you know, she's kind of like what Winona Ryder was in like 89, like this, the goth girl. And I remember seeing that she was going to play Lydia's daughter. I'm like, what a perfect casting. And then honestly, I was just like, I don't think she was the vibe of this movie or what I thought this movie should be at all. Like I thought she was just totally the wrong casting for this. She didn't bring what I think everybody wanted, or at least what I wanted in a Beetlejuice movie. And I'll get in, you know, like I said, more specifically in that section.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that too.
You know, like some of my other spoiler-free notes, like I did enjoy a lot of the afterlife stuff. I like that they kind of build out this world. As someone, like I said, that's a fan of the cartoon, it's really hard to build it out better than the cartoon because you can just do such more interesting visual things. I thought this was pretty good in general. Like some of the stuff was fun. You see in the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler, but like there's lots of fun with like the shrunken head guys and Bob, and you know, like I thought that stuff was like cute and funny. And I think really my main issue with this was like there were just so many plot lines. And most of the plot lines either get resolved in like 3 seconds and they're just like nothings, or they don't get resolved at all. I'm going to suspect that's probably because this movie like has been they've been working on this since 89. Like they wanted to make a sequel. There's been a bunch of iterations that just never made it. And it seems like some of those may have made it into this movie. And they're like, oh, we got to take some of this and some of this and some of this. And I just thought like it was competent. I guess I'll say that. Like it was sloppy, but it was like competent enough that I wasn't like offended.
I just want to connect to a couple of those points.
Yeah.
Micheal Keaton, we kind of said earlier, like he is Beetlejuice. And kind of like you said, he does not miss a beat. It kind of just like jumps on over from like 89 to 2024. And he's the same character. Like nothing has changed. He looks pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And the humor is there. It's not cheesy. It's so easy for that to go wrong and for that humor to not be funny. Especially like when the humor climate and the social climate has kind of changed so much since then, in like 30 something years. God. But you know, he does not miss a beat. He is so funny. He really carries this movie for me, which is funny because in the original Beetlejuice, I really loved the women.
Yeah.
Like all the women and like the dead couple. I thought they were that story. This one, I really, really had high hopes for that trio of women. And it's just, like you said, Winona Ryder, she fell really flat for me. But I feel like she used to be so iconic. And since Stranger Things, and even during Stranger Things, like, I'm not loving her acting. It seems pretty, like, low energy.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just doesn't hit. And I like Jenna Ortega in this movie. But like you said, she kind of plays the same Wednesday Addams character. Just very, like, to the point. And I also thought she was very much like pretty much like the understudy of Aubrey Plaza. Like the things that she said and the way that she said them, just like deadpan. So I was getting those kinds of vibes from her. And then Catherine O'Hara, I love Catherine O'Hara, but the stuff like with the dead husband, like just really kind of rubbed me the wrong way. We can talk about that. But just like that whole plot line just like really didn't sit with me. And so whenever she was like crying over this dead husband, I know, it was so cringy. But when she was doing other things, it was fine, if that makes sense.
I was going to say, and I plan in the spoiler section to get more in that. I mean, I guess it's a little bit of spoiler that there's a dead husband in it. It shouldn't be much of a surprise if you know anything about Jeffrey Jones, then you knew they were going to have
to. Is that a spoiler?
I mean, to me, you kind of got to be an idiot if you thought that Jeffrey Jones was going to somehow get an acting role in 2024. I agree with you. Like, I'm a huge Catherine O'Hara fan. You know, I think she's hilarious, amazing. And this, I agree. Like, Delia Dietz is like an amazing, awesome character, but like, I almost felt like her like manic, crazy personality was like too dialed up in this, where like it was a little more believable in the original Beetlejuice.
Like subtle.
And this one, you could tell like they just kind of gave her carte blanche to be like, go as wild as you can go, and like we don't care.
Moira Rose, basically. Yeah, that's who she was.
And I just thought like, this is just like a little over the top. For me, which is like weird because I mean, if anything, this whole Beetlejuice universe is nothing but over the top. And for me, it's just one of those things that, unfortunately, with many of these, IPs, like once they come revisit it so many years later, like, these actors haven't played these roles in so long, and most of them have grown out of it or are not interested in it anymore. So, they're doing it because I'm sure they're getting paid very handsomely, and, they want to do the fans a service. But yeah, I thought she was just kind of whatever to me.
Yeah, sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it is unfortunately like, a very sad thing. And I think too, it's just, I don't know how much there really is for her to work with. Like, I thought script-wise, it was a little messy. Yeah. Like you said, not even Beetlejuice-wise, because I thought Micheal Keaton did his job. He did what he needed to do. I did want to comment on your thing about, I was actually pretty impressed, because I thought a lot of Beetlejuice's jokes were, like, pretty racy for something. They were definitely aiming at a younger audience. Like, they're definitely trying to rope in younger people with this. And I was kind of impressed that I was like, one of the charms of Beetlejuice is that, like, he's not politically incorrect. He's supposed to be offensive. Like,
it toes that line. It always has. So they needed to be on top of that.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's what the original was so interesting, because this like icon of Beetlejuice, that everyone loves Beetlejuice, but Beetlejuice is like the villain of the first movie. Like, he's not a good guy.
Yeah.
He's like the one causing everyone pain and like torturing them and trying to kill them. And so it's kind of interesting where, like I said, you've got like stuff like the cartoon spin-offs, and I mean, there's been like comic books and stuff, and Beetlejuice is like this icon. It's almost like a Freddy or something, where it's like
he's been romanticized like completely.
And like I said, you just kind of, you kind of knew coming into this, you're like, oh, well, now they're gonna be like, I wonder how many movies we can make out of this. And like, now it's like we kind of got to make him this like anti-hero at least.
Yeah.
I just think that kind of loses some of the charm of the original one.
Yeah, it's a little too likable.
But like I said, it's weird because it's a little too likable, but like, I don't think Micheal Keaton did anything wrong. He's still Beetlejuice. It's just kind of where the stories go. Did you have anything else spoiler free to talk about, or?
Let's just move on, because I will not be able to keep my mouth shut.
I know, right?
Yeah, so let's just go.
Okay, so before we get into it, would you recommend this to everyone listening? Would you recommend seeing Beetlejuice in the theater?
I would recommend seeing Beetlejuice in the theater, because like I said, it is that kind of like big movie theater experience that you get to have every once in a while. Like Barbie was probably like the last one I feel that was big like that, But it's just kind of magical to just be a part of something like that. It feels kind of historical. So I would for that fact. And if you're a big Beetlejuice fan, I feel like this gives you enough, especially with Micheal Keaton's character, and enough nostalgia that you'll like it regardless, even if some things are not perfect and, you know, there's some flaws and stuff. But yeah, I still think it's worth going to see. It seems like everybody who saw it had a generally good time. I feel like there's something for everyone. It's pretty PG most of the time, and you don't need to know too much about Beetlejuice to understand what's going on. But yeah, I would recommend it. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, even all the issues I had with it, I think I'd still recommend going to see it in the theater. It is kind of like an event. You know, you said at the very beginning, it's crazy how it's kind of, you know, become a moment, which it really has. Like, we're only on Saturday that we're recording this, and like, I think it's already clocked over $40 million. So, like, it's probably going to end up being a very profitable film. And it's just kind of, you know, it's very interesting. Obviously, Tim Burton has a huge fan base, but I love just seeing such a iconic IP that's kind of been dormant for all these years. I mean, the cartoon finished in the early 90s, so this hasn't been around. There's nothing other than the original and the cartoon to watch. So it's just interesting to see this come back and it be just as big as it was. So, you know what? I think for that, like, if anything, you know, if you're our age and you're listening to us, like, at least, like, I don't know, take your kids to it, try to rope them in with it. Maybe they'll be interested in the original or the cartoon. And, you know, if not, you know you want to go see Micheal Keaton in the suit again and doing all his antics. So, yeah, 2 recommends for Beetlejuice. So with that, let's cut on over to the spoiler section. So we are now in the spoiler section for Beetlejuice. This is the part where if you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't want it spoiled, shut this off, go see it. But if you don't care, keep on listening, because we are going to just spoil everything we can about it. So Jill, you know, let's get into it. You know, is there anywhere you want to start with a spoiler section?
I mean, let's just get into it before I forget about it. My man, Danny DeVito, I feel like a little egregious in this movie. It felt a little too gratuitous, a little too much of gratuitous Danny DeVito, because you can see him from behind. You can hear his voice. You know it's Danny DeVito. And they take a little too long, I feel like, to kind of pan to his face. Like, we know it's him. That's my problem, but also I love Danny DeVito, so it can kind of do no wrong, and I just love to see him, you know, gurgle and deflate and whatever.
Yeah, I was pumped to see Danny DeVito, like, obviously, you know, iconic Batman villain in Batman Returns for Tim Burton. So super, super pumped for that. And this is where I thought, like, the movie really worked and kind of almost where I was hoping it went, because he was, like, crude and politically incorrect and, like, it was gross, and we were really, like, I'm like, okay, like, we're really in the afterlife, you know, so I'm very interested in what's going on here. And then this is also where this is the beginning of where I was like, what's going on here? Because obviously Danny DeVito being this janitor, then we get the introduction of Dolores, played by Monica Bellucci, who is Tim Burton's girlfriend.
We got to talk about her.
Yeah, which, you know, in theory, I understand. This is one of those plot lines that I'm assuming was brought over, because I think the original idea for a Beetlejuice sequel was like Beetlejuice in Love or something. Like, it was... So it was gonna be, you know, him courting someone. So I'm like, oh, this must be like something brought over from that. But this is like what I'm talking about with plot lines. Like, we're kind of introduced to Dolores as like this villain. Like, this is gonna be like the big bad of the movie. And she's in this for what, like 3 minutes? Like, I mean, she's barely in this. There's no real plot other than Beetlejuice giving the story of his marriage to her.
Okay. We just did April Ghouls not too long ago, right?
Yes.
And Beetlejuice was a part of our April Ghouls month. And we had a hell of a time trying to find a ghoul movie. And we said that Beetlejuice is that, like, one iconic ghoul that we have. And I just gotta say, I'm so disappointed that we didn't get more of Dolores. Because she was a hot Franken girlfriend. I love seeing her, like, get her parts and put them together and like staple them together. I thought it was so hot. I was like, wow, I just want to see like these two kind of fight it out more. That would have been a better kind of story for me. I really liked it. But yeah, like you said, she's supposed to be this big villain and nothing really happens at the end.
Yeah, I mean, she's just kind of inconsequential. And I think this is where I probably would have liked it to lean more into the cartoon, because obviously Tim Burton was interested in exploring more of the afterlife and like, you know, what's this afterlife like the world, all this kind of stuff. But we don't really get that because realistically, we're just not in the afterlife long enough in this film, which is very similar. You know, people are probably like, well, you know, that's kind of similar to the first one. But, you know, the first one's the first one. We're still world building in the first one. And it's just kind of where I think, you know, too many plots are built up because we have all these other things going on with everyone that's alive and they all kind of have their thing. But then we have Beetlejuice, who I want to argue might be in this one less than he's in the original one. Like Beetlejuice himself is not in this very long, but it's weird because they introduce him pretty early and then kind of just disappear from him for a while. He's lurking, you know, we're seeing visions of him and stuff, but he's never like fully in it kind of till the end. And it's just like, you know, I think they need to pick a lane. The first one, he's dangerous. Like, even though he's not in it for a long time, there's always like a sense that he could be around the corner. He like could be doing, you know, some, you know, evil deed. Where this one, I was like, maybe you guys should have done the team up and just made this whole movie a team up. They're kind of in the afterlife and they're exploring that. I just felt like anything I felt they kind of like took 2 steps forward, they took like 3 steps back with.
I agree. And they were kind of doing cool things. Like they also had what I would call like the American Horror Story murder house plot line with like that dead kid who murdered his family and tries to barter Jenna Ortega's soul, or what's her name, Astrid, for his. I thought that was cool. I kind of liked their like romance. I don't know what it was, but it worked for me. And then I realized he was dangerous. I don't know. I like that, but it was just, there's a lot of plot lines going on, and a lot of the plot was kind of centered around Catherine O'Hara's story, Jenna Ortega's story, Winona Ryder's story. So you're adding in all these characters and making it more about them, when in the original movie it was like mostly about the couple, right?
Yeah.
And then Beetlejuice. Like you said, so Beetlejuice also gets less time here.
Yeah, and I did, like, I liked, you know, kind of this, like, teen love, and then, like, obviously, she, you know, she does have, you know, her mother's genes, so she obviously can see dead people. But it was, like, it was just weird beats that, like, I could kind of feel, like, okay.
Beats old juice?
Yeah, well... I mean, it was just like, I could understand that Tim Burton was like, I want to, like, you know, I want to do some twists and turns, subvert your expectations, where, like, I just thought it was odd. Like, anytime Jenna Ortega and this boy, before we kind of get the reveal, it's like weird indie rock music. It doesn't even
I kind of liked it.
It doesn't even seem like a Beetlejuice movie. And, you know, I got this, you know, I was talking about I didn't overly like Jenna Ortega in this because I got what they were doing, where it's like, okay, Lydia Dietz is a goth girl. What happens when goth girls grow up and they have kids? And, you know, she's like, she still dresses like a goth girl, but Lydia's kind of like growing out of being a goth girl. And, you know, she's, after a job, a career, and money, and taking care of her kid, and connecting with her kid. And I get you don't want her kid to also be just like the original Lydia Dietz and be gothy and all this stuff. But it's just like, I don't know, that match is what works with Beetlejuice, where this kid that seems anything but gothy, has no interest in the afterlife or anything like that. And to me, also, when she goes into the world of the afterlife, also seems to not really care. So I'm like, well, if this character doesn't care, I don't care. And, it's great she saw her dad, but, like, she's still not that interested in, like, Beetlejuice or anything like that. It's just, and, maybe it's just the connection of Micheal Keaton, Winona Ryder. Like, it's just, like, this iconic pairing that isn't gonna be recreated, because I just don't know where you go from this. Obviously, they're setting this up for sequels, and with as much money as it'll make, like, I think they're already planning on another one. But I'm just like, I don't know, like, are you bringing Jenna Ortega back? Like, she still doesn't really have any sort of relationship with Beetlejuice, so I don't really see where the commonality in that is.
One beat I really liked about Winona Ryder and Micheal Keaton together is that kind of wedding they had, which is kind of like a flashback to the wedding, like 30 years ago when she was a child bride. But I really like that scene with, like, the orchestra in the church. I thought that was shot really well. Them, like, she's in that, like, red wedding dress, and he's in his, like, kind of burgundy maroon suit, and they're, like, floating, and there's a giant cake, and there's gross stuff. I just love, like, gross, dark, romantic shit, and that wedding was everything for me. I was all about it. Did you care at all about that, or?
I mean, we knew we were gonna get it. I know the trailer kind of showed off. They didn't show off the song, but they, like, kind of showed there was gonna be some sort of dance sequence, and you're like, obviously, if they're gonna call back to an iconic scene from the original, it's gonna be we're gonna play a song and make people sing it and all this kind of stuff. I didn't mind the scene. I thought the song was kind of blah. I'm not overly familiar. I think the song is MacArthur Park, which is funny because the only reason I kind of knew what the song was is because Weird Al parodied that song, and instead of MacArthur Park, he made a song called Jurassic Park, all about Jurassic Park. So at first I kept thinking, I was like, man, it'd be really funny if the scene is to Jurassic Park by Weird Al, and then it ended up being MacArthur Park. And I mean, maybe that's because it's a song I'm not familiar with, but I just thought that, in the original, like, the contrast between kind of like the goth afterlife dead people imagery with Harry Belafonte's music of this, like, calypso music was, like, just such a interesting contrast that it worked. I felt like the music in this, I was like, I thought it was like bad musical programming in it. I was like, I get they do the callback with the kids choir in the funeral for Deo, but I was like, I want to see them do some other sort of contrast and not just like this older song that it just kind of felt like lazy to me.
I gotcha.
I was just like, I don't feel like this is going to become iconic like the Deo song became.
Oh, definitely not. I don't know if they could have, like, really competed with that. It was just something that happened, and it, like, people really liked it.
Yeah,
it was just like, like you said, one of those contrasts that really works. Like, you wouldn't put together. It's hard to risk something like that and, like, get it right, and everyone likes it. Another thing about that scene, though, is you got Willem Dafoe for, like, This was another subplot.
I loved him in this.
I thought it was so funny that his assistant kept handing him coffee, and he just, like, crushed it and threw it in his trash can. And he was just trying to be cool. He was just trying to be a cool dude.
Just an actor.
He's just an actor. But I thought it was so funny when they're having that, like, wedding funeral scene. and it cuts to him and his like special force, like, and he's trying to like give them the signals to like go forward, and he's got guns and stuff, and he's dude, I thought that was so funny.
I loved William Dafoe in this. I thought it was funny because to me, I was like, this embodies like the original Afterlife in the original film, how silly it is. One thing I was kind of disappointed about was, you know, and I get they were going for this like, you know, hard-boiled detective type of feel with the Afterlife, but to me, the funny thing about the Afterlife in the original was just like how much of a bureaucracy it was. It was just like offices, paperwork, getting sent from one line to the other, and I felt like they kind of took that out of this, and I wish there was more of the, like, I wanted to see a bigger bureaucracy.
Guess they got technology or something in the Afterlife all these years.
Yeah, well, and speaking of technology, like, how did you feel about, you know, Beetlejuice, like, you know, sending all the influencers into their phone?
Hold on. Yeah. I want to talk about that, but crap, what were we just talking about before then?
The bureaucracy.
No Miss Argentina.
Mike will be devastated. I
am devastated because she is my homegirl. She is like my favorite character in Beetlejuice. And still you got like her cousin wearing some weird little outfit and not being half as cunty or iconic or as magnificent as Miss Argentina.
I would have been okay even if they recasted this and still had Miss Argentina as the secretary, because it would only make sense because she's dead. So this is what her job is for her forever. And
Purgatory.
I felt like, you know, other than our callback to the shrunken head guy now like working, like I was kind of sad we didn't get callbacks to like any of the other people that worked. Yeah. Even if you had to recast them. I like at least have that kind of there.
You gotta have her. Like, what do you mean you're not gonna have her? But I did like Willem Dafoe's assistant.
Yeah, she was funny.
What was her name? Debbie or something?
Yeah, it's something like that. Holding the cue cards killed me.
She was so good.
Yeah, I thought she was hilarious.
What were we gonna talk about?
Oh, the influencers.
Oh, okay. I thought that looked atrocious.
Yeah.
The CGI or like whatever they used there was very not the animation that we had in the original like Beetlejuice. One of the iconic things about Beetlejuice is the mix of like reality with that very like distinct
like stop motion animation,
stop motion style that, you know, is in the original Beetlejuice. And I felt like that was a crime against the whole thing.
Now I will say overall in the movie, I felt better than I thought I was going to. I didn't think the CGI was atrocious in this. I was like, oh my God,
except for that scene.
That scene was rough. Now, I know they really did the hype up of like, oh, there's going to be so many practical effects and stuff. But I agree with you. Like, I really wanted to see some old school 80s stop motion going on. Because to me, that's what made Tim Burton's early stuff like really pop and different. And I would have liked, like, I don't, you know, and this is me being greedy, like, I don't care about these new kids, so I don't care if it looks like crap. Like, shoot it exactly like you would shoot old school stop animation. Because even the sandworms in this, like, I was like, there's a little, like, I believe they did some sort of stop motion on, but then they obviously like ran it through a computer or something, and it just
refined it,
and it just didn't have that like tactile effect. Now they did have some great stuff, like when we have Dolores like sucking the souls out of people. Like, I love that that was like a physical thing, so you saw people pick up the shrunken, you know, the deflated bodies and stuff, and you know, I thought that was great. But yeah, I was just, you know, there's just something charming about the 80s stop motion. And yeah, I agree. The influencer thing, I was just like, to me, that was like one of those things where I was like, oh, this is like a blatant, like, hey, we see you, like, younger kids, like, this isn't just your parents' franchise anymore. This is yours.
I guess. It was kind of lame, though. It wasn't cool.
I figure, yeah, we kind of spoiled it in the spoiler free because, you know, I called it anybody an idiot if you didn't suspect, but yeah, well, I guess we should have a conversation about Charles. being deceased, Jeffrey Jones,
Yeah.
who we talked about, and when we talked about the original Beetlejuice, that if you don't know, in the early 2000s, or maybe a little later than that, was convicted of like child sex crimes and basically shunned from Hollywood, as he should be. So obviously that was a big question on how they were going to deal with that. I was very interested in it because, all that terrible stuff aside, like Charles is one of my favorite characters in the original movie. He, Jeffrey Jones as an actor is pretty funny, and he like played that dad role super funny. So I was very curious on how they were going to handle that. And how did you feel about it? Basically, him being eaten by a shark, but totally animated. So they basically didn't have to, even do a likeness of him.
Okay. So, like, I understand that, Charles Dietz is a very, he's iconic in the story as that weird father figure. I get it. 1989 has been a long time since then. I think if you're convicted of child crimes and you refuse to like declare or like let people know that you're a sex offender and you're into like child porn and stuff, I don't think it's cool the amount of, I'm going to say like glorification he kind of got in this movie, because his face was everywhere. It was in the newspaper. It was on his grave. They kept talking about him. I think just animating him and not having a head, you're still giving him that attention. I don't know. I feel like they should have just said, yeah, we separated, he's gone. Just not deal with it, or be like, yeah, he's dead, whatever. But when Delia just kept coming back to talking about her husband, I was like, I don't really remember you guys being that close in the first movie. I think you guys hated each other. It's not realistic to me that all you can think about is your dead husband, and that's like what your character has become. So it really was like the low point of the movie for me about how they kept talking about it.
Yeah, well, it's one of those hard things, because I get it, because they need a reason that bring everyone back to this town that everyone has left. See, to me, I did agree. I was like, oh, like even his gravestone had like a hologram of basically a younger Jeffrey Jones, and
didn't have to do that.
I thought they should have left all that out. I actually thought like the shark biting his head off, and then his character essentially like having this muffled, obviously not Jeffrey Jones voice, but like not having to see his face, like to me that would be the biggest fu to him ever, is like, here's his character, but like we're so disgusted by his crimes that like we're like, you can't even see him, he's just a torso. And I thought that was witty, but then I agree where we continue to see his face on stuff, I was like, I don't really enjoy that we're giving him that space. And I mean, I was one that said on the original Beetlejuice episode that it didn't really prevent, it's a difficult thing, I guess. There's, I said, I can still watch that movie and enjoy it and enjoy his performance, but now in a movie we make now, we can't give him time in a movie we make now. Yeah, I thought half of it okay, half of it not, kind of just like his body. So, I
don't know. It was just like, 1989, no one knew about any of this, if any of that had happened by then. But if that stuff comes up and like it's publicly known, I don't think it's a good idea to put that in a movie where you also have like children's stories basically in it. This is kind of like a PG-ish or like a spicy PG movie for families to watch. And also, like, in the original one, I thought it was weird that, like, Lydia was a child bride. So I think it's funny to have that and then, like, actually have, pictures of a pedo, like, in your movie. So I don't know, but I didn't love his face all the time being shown.
I was thinking, I'm, like, going, through my list. I'm like, what haven't we talked about yet? We still haven't really talked about Beetlejuice at all. We're talking about like all these like side plots and other characters, but we haven't like actually talked about Beetlejuice. Like I said, I'm gonna keep repeating it. Like, the good thing about Beetlejuice is that Beetlejuice is the best character in this. Like like we keep saying, Keaton didn't miss a beat. I thought the jokes were all funny with him. I actually thought it was pretty funny, like when he is explaining his marriage to Dolores, where he like puts on the, the Spanish subtitle voice, and he's
that
like
was so funny,
telling it like this old, like scary, like Spanish witch horror movie. Like I just thought, I'm like, Keaton, man, like no one does it better than Keaton.
That was one of the highlights of the movie for me too. Just like that classic vibe they had, the black and white, the subtitles. It had just like this nice dark, like campy tone that was just so Beetlejuice, like you said, speaking different languages. I thought that was great.
Yeah, oh yeah, super funny, and I liked all his interactions with Bob. Like I thought him and Bob were hilarious, and just like barking orders at Bob. Although I will say, until I saw all the different name tags, I was like, man, it would be kind of funny if they were all named Bob. So he was just like consistently thought he was talking to the same Bob, but it'd be like a different Bob all the time.
It was even better. They all have like really basic names, like Brad, Al. I don't know.
Yeah.
I love that.
Like I said, it's kind of hard to me because like Keaton, if I was just rating this on like Keaton's performance, is like 10 out of 10. Like I was like, he was just that good in it, I thought.
I wrote down Micheal Keaton is larger than life, because when he's on that screen, you really feel it. Like you feel like he is that character.
Yeah.
And 2024, he is still able to create that same like weird Beetlejuice magic, and I think that's awesome. So my favorite part is with Jenna Ortega's boyfriend when he's trying to like get her soul or whatever and like leave her in purgatory and like go back into the world, whatever. And they were like bonding over like Crime and Punishment earlier. and I thought it was so funny that he thinks he's going to get away with it. And then Micheal Keaton, Beetlejuice, he like spins around. He's wearing his like little officer outfit. And then he like stamps his like little death passport. And he's like, wasn't it Dostoevsky's saying or whatever, later fucker, and then he just like lets him drop. The later fucker is like the biggest like curse word they have in this entire movie, because there's a lot of times where they like censor it.
Yeah.
So like they saved all of that up for that moment, and like the shock of hearing it and just like the moment, it's just so funny. I was cracking up, dude.
Yeah, I also, that line, I was laughing out loud. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah. And then on the stamp it says you're shit out of luck or whatever. He's just done with.
Yeah, I thought that was super funny. Even though they spoiled it in the commercial, like I loved when he did the Juice is Loose one. Just shout out, how much OJ has been in popular culture lately. I thought that was hilarious. Pretty much everything he said, just super, super funny.
So I was a little bit confused by the ending. It was kind of a weird ending, I feel like, where they're trying to end the story. And it seemed like they're like, okay, this is the last Beetlejuice movie ever. You got Lydia Dietz just like saying that, I'm going to live my life. I'm going to be happy. And then she has a nightmare. She has a nightmare that her daughter Astrid's like having a baby, and it's a baby Beetlejuice.
Yeah,
baby Beetlejuice. Also, we haven't talked about baby Beetlejuice.
I liked it. Baby Beetlejuice creepy.
It was so weird. I liked it.
Maybe the creepiest baby since the baby from Trainspotting.
I guess so. But I thought that was cute. But I didn't love the dream. I didn't love that they were trying to like end off the, this is like the last sequel, the only sequel. And then they're just like, oh, but it looks like we're going to have another sequel because she's still seeing Beetlejuice next to her in her bed. And like,
yeah, well, I mean, you can't kill someone that's already dead. So he didn't go into the afterlife. But yeah, I mean, I expected it. That was one of those things where I was like, okay, like, they're going to try to turn this into a franchise like they turn everything else. So it was like one of those expected things. So I wasn't as offended by it. But like I said, it's kind of my feeling about all these kind of things where I'm like, oh, okay, like whatever. I guess like we'll do it again and see how it goes. I'll be interested if like they do another one and Tim Burton comes back. I'm kind of curious if Tim Burton is going to ride this train or if he's just kind of done his part and they'll give give it to someone younger or something, and you'll see this go the way of, many other franchises where it's just going to be its own thing now, and he'll just cash checks.
Who knows?
Well, with that, let's get into rating it. So if you're new to the program, our rating system is nay, okay, yay, or slay. Jill, what would you rate Beetlejuice Beetlejuice?
I am going to give Beetlejuice an okay. I think it, like you said, it was competent. I can't forgive them for not having Miss Argentina in the movie. So that's that takes it down a notch. Also, the weird Jeffrey Jones shit, to me, if the less was more. But like you said, I didn't think about having his body digitized could be like a fuck you to him having the muffled voice. I didn't think about that, so I'll think about that some more. But there were some scenes where, like you said, it kind of lacked that Beetlejuice, tactile kind of weird animation that they had in the 80s, which they, tried to emulate. But like you said, even the sandworms, weren't quite there.
Yeah.
And it was just a little too smooth, a little too good. It needed kind of that, jankiness, that Tim Burton jankiness to it. But I thought Micheal Keaton was fantastic. Beetlejuice is back, and he's carrying this movie. It's worth it just to go see Micheal Keaton do his thing. I was really hyped for the trio of Jenna Ortega, Catherine O'Hara, and Winona Ryder. Mostly they kind of let me down, but I don't know if that's their fault or if it's where the story was going, because there was a lot of it. But I will also say that I freaking love Dolores. She is so hot, and I would have loved more of her. But yeah, it's an okay for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna come in with an okay too. The first note I wrote was Tim Burton, so not back. This continues on, I think this might be the most back he's been for me,
right.
But still not really there. I thought, like you said, I thought our trio of Catherine O'Hara, Jenna Ortega, and Winona Ryder were kind of all a little bit of a letdown, especially Jenna Ortega and Winona Ryder. And the high point of this is Micheal Keaton, and the stuff that we do get to see of the afterlife world I thought was awesome. William Dafoe, Danny DeVito, they were awesome. I did like the idea of Dolores as this bad villain, and I kind of wish they just kind of stuck with that story, because I would have loved to see all these characters, even our living characters, brought into the afterworld, and just I would have liked to just see a full movie of the afterlife and the world, and just some wild crazy stuff. And I just feel like Tim Burton could be back with that, just doing crazy Tim Burton-esque stuff like he was doing early in his career. And I think, I just think this movie, like I said, I went and saw it. I'm not pissed at it or anything like that. I was I'm not disappointed. I went and saw it. I felt like there was money that was well spent, I guess, but I'm not coming out of it oh yeah, they surpassed the first one. The first one's still the best one. So yeah, 2 okays for Beetlejuice. And if you are not following us on social media, you can do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on pretty much everything: Facebook, X, Instagram, Letterboxd, Tumblr, Threads, Bluesky. Pretty much, if there's a social media, we're probably on it at It Slays Podcast. And Jill, why don't you talk about our lovely Patreon?
And if you want to support the show, like our horror hounds, Holly, Nicholas, Patrick, Mark, Sacrotype, Joy, Dan, Brian, Trevor, and James, and gain access to our Patreon exclusive show, Stream Screams, hosted by me, and get episodes of this main show 48 hours early, be sure to head over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Rowan, anything from Beetlejuice making the spooky playlist?
I mean, I'll have to look. I'm not sure. I've got to double check to make sure we have the Beetlejuice theme song on there. I think we do, but if we don't, I'll add it. Because they pretty much use the same theme song. They beef it up a little bit in this one. So maybe we'll add the beefed up version. So to hear that, go on over to the It Slays Podcast Horrific playlist on Spotify. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of the social media that I mentioned before. Go into the bio, click the Linktree link. There's a link to take you directly there. And we upload licensed music or scores from iconic horror movies we review, or just horror movies we love. So go follow the playlist and get your spooky music on, because why the hell not? And all that's left is what's next. And the next one you are going to get will be later on in the week. Me and Jill will be back, and we'll be talking about the new A24 horror movie, The Front Room. I'm sure we're going to have lots of things to say about that. So, come back. We're getting spooky seasons here, and we're getting horror movies, seems, every week now. So, until next time, I'm your humble host, Rowan.
Hi, it's Jill.
And if you keep listening, we'll keep slaying.